thing to say. But I mean it. Because pain is what makes us learn. So, the simplest way of looking at pain is our physical pain. Victor, when you go and you put your hand on a hot stove and you burn yourself, you're probably not going to do it again. You learn from that. But emotional pain and emotional hurt is a little bit more complex because it's one of those things where we're participants. We're not perpetrators. Anybody who's ever been dumped knows this. It's unfair. I did everything right and it really, really hurts. So why do we hurt? Well, first of all, as I said there, self-preservation. Hot stoves, you're not going to do that again because, yeah, physical damage. But emotional is a little bit more societal. Why does it hurt so much when we get dumped? Well, pretty simple. Nothing less than the future of the human race depends upon that. And emotional pain, worse, actually affects physical pain more. Anybody who's ever been into an argument or been in a bad mood and stubbed their toe knows that you actually get more pain, more physical pain. And when it comes down to this, how do we avoid pain? Well, the simple answer is a painkiller. Opiates work beautiful for physical pain, but they're not a long-term solution. And emotional pain, drinking drugs, again, temporary. Effectively, what you're doing there is you are borrowing tomorrow's happiness to bring in today. So, I'm going to tell you a personal story about how I found some of these tools, and I'll share them with you. It's 2008, fresh out of university, bought myself a nice little flat. Got a nice trophy girlfriend, well-paying job, global financial crisis, lose everything. Lose the job, lose the girlfriend, lose the flat, all of that. Had to move back in with my dad. And my dad was then saying to me, he was like, Bruce, you can't just go and sit around the house, do something. So I went down the pub and I saw a little sign on the back of the door. And it said, we want you to volunteer. And it was from the Samaritans, which is an organisation for people who, well, basically it's an organisation that allows people to phone in who are in emotional distress. Self-harm, suicide, the whole lot. And it was incredibly emotionally painful because if you do everything that you can and you're trying to help somebody who is committing suicide and it doesn't work out and you know the other person didn't make it, then emotionally that's really painful. But what did I learn from this? Well, the first thing on dealing with anything painful is boundaries. You have to go and say, I will help you as much as I can, but I can only get you to this stage. I can't get any further. Secondly, listening skills. Because if you really listen to what people say, then you, more often than not, get a better result. And thirdly, empathy. Empathy, in essence, short, is to say, how does that make you feel? You listen to what the other person says, and then you then go and you change your approach accordingly. Now, empathy must never be confused with sympathy. As I said, empathy is how does that make you feel? Sympathy is, I know how you feel. So, by being empathetic and listening and adjusting your approach, you're getting a positive feedback loop because the other person is telling you something, you're adjusting, and then you can then do that. action that is required. Sympathy is you telling them what to do. And generally people say, screw you, you don't know my situation. Who the hell are you to tell me anything? But finally, in order to have all of those above, you need to heal yourself. Because you need to be comfortable with dealing with your own pain. Because if you don't heal yourself, you bleed on people who didn't cut you. And this is a way to look at it. How do you heal yourself? First of all, it's a vulnerable process. People should be privileged to hear your pain story, which means you don't need to tell it to everybody. Only the privileged few should ever hear it. Secondly, take responsibility for what you can do within your boundaries. And that then leads us to a little bit of a final story. Marcel Proust was a very, very, very rich French man. He wrote the longest book in the Latin alphabet, ironically called In Search of Lost Time. But his last journal has got a nice little quote. And it says, "We are healed from suffering only by experiencing it to the full." And that is why I want you to hurt. Because by hurting, by suffering, you learn life's lessons.